How does Pac-Man relate to inequalities? Pac-Man was one of my favorite childhood games, but how does Pac-Man relate to inequalities? Um, well, this little cat or pig or whatever it looks like, I try to put out the inequality signs. So in order to understand inequalities, we have to sort of identify these signs. So the first one we all know is the equal sign because we have done a lot of solving equations. So this means equals. Anything is equal to anything. Well, use this equal sign to determine that. Other signs that you find in this little pig or cat is that you have, in addition to equal, well, what if you don't want it to be equal? You want it to be greater than. Oh, these guys are together. These guys are greater than and less than. So let me just kind of give you an idea of what they are. So this one is your greater than. It's always good to put this sort of in a sentence because greater than doesn't really mean anything. This one is less than. So how do we sort of memorize this and how do we relate that to Pac-Man? How I always remember as a child, or when I was learning this, not as a child, but this sort of looks like an L. So if you look at this, I can rotate this and that becomes your L. And if you can remember that, then that's your less than, right? And other people have remembered this like a Pac-Man, if I were to draw this Pac-Man, and this one is always going to eat the smaller one, so it eats the smaller. So this one will be less than because your bigger one will eat the smaller one, meaning the one on the right side or the left side is bigger. I like to use a less than because it sort of relates to less than. Then think about which one eats smaller. Some people have drawn this as an alligator or whatever, eats the smaller one, whichever you prefer. And then in addition to just less than or strictly greater than, you have, well, that's the whole thing. These two signs below, and that's your greater than. So I'm just going to draw it here. That's greater than, or bigger than, so we're going to say greater than, but because there's another bar here that looks like an equal sign, it's greater than or equal to. So this is just sort of your preliminary vocabulary for this little section. So this one has your less than, so I'm just going to write it like that, so it looks like LESS, less than, but because it has the bottom one, this one could also mean equal to. So basically anytime you see this one and this one, there are two things that can occur. They can be the same, or one could be smaller or bigger than the other. So how do we do this in inequalities equation? And when you look at this, there are four things you need to know. You need to describe this sort of statement to understand this. You can graph it, and then you can always do this by checking if you got it right or not. So let's see what we can do. Let's try the question that looks like y plus 4 is less than 8. So you have this question similar. You're going to solve for y, just like solving for equations. So your main objective here is try to isolate this variable by itself. And right now it's not by itself because it has a plus 4 with it. So just like solving for equations, I need to isolate the y, so I need to get rid of this 4. So I subtract 4, subtract 4. So then y is less than positive 4. 8 subtract 4 is positive 4. So what is this statement talking about? Basically, if we were to look at the original one, y plus 4 is less than 8. Basically, you're saying something, that box is something, plus 4 is, instead of equal, this one now means less than 8. So what number can go into this blank or into the variable and add it to 4 will make it smaller than 8. That's what you're trying to solve. So then after you have solved for the variable, this is after you have solving, well, this is saying that y is less than 4. So this means that in order to be consistent, or to agree with the statement, to be consistent with y plus 4 is less than 8, the y must be smaller than 4. Seems like I just said a lot of things that could be kind of confusing. So let's look at this again. We're going to have the blank plus 4 is less than 8. And what you just solve is y less than 4. So basically this is saying that any number that is smaller than this one, smaller than 4, and if you plug that into this blank, it would work. So let's try a couple numbers. Let's say, what's a number smaller than 4? Well, let's try 3. If we plug in 3 plus 4 is less than 8, is this right? 7 is less than 8. So that's right. Let's try another number, say 0. So 0 plus 4 is less than 8. So then 4 is less than 8. Is this right? Yeah, 4 is smaller than 8. So when does it not work? Well, if you choose a number that's bigger than 4, say if we were to use a number like 100, 100 plus 4 is less than 8. So basically you're saying 104 is smaller than 8. Well, that doesn't work because it's not. 104 is not less than 8. So that doesn't work. So the numbers that can fit into this original example has to be smaller than 4. Okay, so that's how you can check your statement. So basically what we did was we just plugged it in. So how do we graph the statement? Because this is y is less than positive 4. We're going to have, say this is my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on my number line, 0, -1, -2. This is saying that any number, y has to be a number that's smaller than 4. So what's a number that's smaller than 4? Let me change colors so you can see. Is 3 smaller? Yeah, it's smaller, smaller, smaller. All these ones are smaller. What about in betweens? Yeah, that's still smaller, 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 smaller. This is smaller. All these are smaller. So basically this entire line to infinity would be smaller than 4. But then how close can we get to 4? Is the y including 4 or is it excluding 4? Well, because this is just less than 4, it's saying it's smaller than 4 but not including. We're going to use an empty circle, meaning you're not going to include 4. You're just going to include everything close to 4 but not quite. So that's how you graph this inequality. So this is just a very basic example. Let's try another example of this. So here's another. Let's switch up the colors. Let's try x greater than equal to plus 2x minus 5. So you notice there's variables on both sides and a constant. You're solving for the constant, so your variable again, so you're going to isolate this by itself. So you want the x's on one side, just like how you did from before. So I'm going to just move this x to that side. Whoa, what happened? X to this side. So I'm going to subtract x. Okay, x subtract x is 0. So remember, a lot of times when you subtract it and you could have something like blank on the left side, you think that it's gone. So this is a little bit more advanced. But x subtract x is 0. 0 is sort of still a number. So we're still going to have that there. 2x minus x is 1x, so I'm just going to play x, and then this is -5. And I'm going to move my -5 onto the other side. So you notice that 0 plus 5 is still plus 5. That still works. So here's one little trick that some of us kind of forgets or gets confusing, is that most of the time we always write our letter, then the sign, then the number, because we're saying that x or y is less than or x is greater than. But what happens when you have, say, plus 5 is greater than equal to x? So what is x? Is x greater than 5 or less than 5? That's where it gets sort of tricky for your mind to kind of think about. So in order to put the letters first, so to put the letter first, we're just going to say x is on this side, and we're going to move the plus 5 on this side. Here's the part that you have to remember, though. If you're going to do that, this inequality sign must be switched to the opposite. So must be switched. So this, instead of being a greater than, it has to be a less than equal to. Because this is saying that x is less than or equal to 5, meaning any number, x is either 5 or smaller. And here it says plus 5 is greater than x. That means that the 5 is going to be bigger or equal to this number. That's why it's really confusing. So a really quick way, if you don't even want to listen to that, just remember, put your letters first, right? Put your numbers second place. In order to do that, you're going to switch the sign. That's all you have to know. Just reverse, you're going to reverse the reading of it. So then how do we draw this on a number line? So I hope I'm not confusing you up to this point, because it's a little bit confusing here. So I'm just going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is -1, -2, -3, and -4. So then this is saying that x is less than or equal to 5. Basically, you're going to find one number that is 5 or smaller. Okay, because x is saying x is any number. So what's a number that's smaller than positive 5? Is 4? Yeah. Is 3? Yeah. Is 2? Yeah. So all these numbers are going to be smaller than 5. Can 5 be included in this? Yes, because it has an equal as well. So it's not just smaller as in less than, but it's also less than or equal to 5. So you're going to have here. So all the numbers in this little range and to infinity will be less than 5. Does it include 5? Yeah. So in order to show including, you're going to do this filled in circle. That's your filled in circle for including or equal to. That's it. That's your number line and graphing it out. And if you want to check this question, you're going to find one number that is along this line and plug it into your x, and it should work. So let's see if I can try this. X is greater than 2x plus 5. Let me double check if I got that right. Oh, it's -5. So -5, and moving ahead. And then this is x is less than greater than 5, less than equal to positive 5. Okay, so we can choose 5. Let's say 5 is greater than 2 times 5 subtract 5. So 2 times 5 is 10, minus 5 is 5. 5 and 5. Does this work? 5 is greater than 5? Well, we're not going to use greater because 5 could also be equal to 5. So that works. So you checked your answer. It is consistent with your statement. Then you got it right. So that's your first sort of preliminary first video on inequalities. I hope it worked out, because it does take a little bit of time to think about how this number line works. And the solving equations part, I think you guys can all do, because that's what we've been doing. But the less than and greater than kind of is kind of a little bit tricky. So take some time, do some practice questions. Hopefully this works. I'm going to do another video after this just for more of challenging questions. Okay, so I'll see you then.